Hello, thank you for coming to today's video. I am at Burt's Barracuda Harley-Davidson, and I'm going to be test riding today. I'd probably put it as one of my dream bikes. Now, there does so happen to be a Indian FTR in the parking lot, and I'd put that up there as one of my dream bikes too, but that's not the bike I'm riding today. Maybe one day, but today is going to be the Sportster S. Now, when the Sportster S was first leaked, however many years ago, everyone kind of thought it was fake because it was just so crazy. It was so different, but personally, I liked the way it looked, and now it's released, and it's actually kind of divisive. People don't really like it that much, but hey, I gotta ride it to find out why. Let it do its little thing. Okay. All right. This has a very similar seating position to the Fat Bob, but it's more compact. It's essentially the same feeling, like the way your feet are, the way your hands are, but like the bars are more lower, so it doesn't have that much of a cruiser kind of feeling to it. Like, I can see why people complain about this, coming from a cruiser, like a Fat Bob. If you were to go from a Fat Bob to this, and you like the Fat Bob stance and the way you sit on it, I can understand why you wouldn't necessarily like this. So far, I don't hate it. Is it comfortable? And I wouldn't say it's the most comfortable bike I've been on, but it's not that bad. It does kind of have it has this kind of like feeling to it though. Like, it kind of feels like you're perched over it a little. Like you're pushing down on the bike, and usually with bikes, you'd want to be more, like, not necessarily perched on it. You want to be able to like straddle the bike, and actually, like, you don't want all the weight, you don't want to be tense up top, and that's kind of, the Sportster S kind of has that feeling, like it's forcing you to be stiff up top. I don't know, it's not too bad though. Like, it's nothing I wouldn't necessarily ride. But I also like the way the Ninja 400 felt, so I don't know, it's not that bad. I've heard a lot of people complain about it, and rightfully so. If you are primarily into cruisers and you got on this thing doesn't necessarily have a cruiser kind of stance to it. I'd compare it to, like, imagine a Sportster. I don't know, because I know there's like the Sportster 48, the Iron 1200, there's a bunch of different Sportsters, and they all have kind of different stances to them, so I can't tell you specifically like which model of the Sportster this would
old Sportster it would necessarily compare to. But yeah, it just isn't. Like, the ergonomics are just kind of rough for this to be necessarily a cruiser per se. These are not cruiser ergonomics. So I have been on an Indian Scout. The Indian Scout is a lot more like a Sportster, like a Vulcan S. The triangle's wrong. It doesn't have the cruiser triangle to it. Genuinely, I do like this. But I can see where people are coming from, you know, because this riding triangle is all kinds of fucked. Ooh. This thing can get out from you that very easily. Holy shit. So, another thing I think people have mentioned, I don't know if it was this bike specifically, but you want an ass shelf. You want a shelf to grab your butt when you do heavy acceleration. And this ain't it. This stock seat is not it. I started sliding pretty good, and I got a little scared. We're still getting on it though. This is a little ridiculous. So, wow. It has way more getup than you'd ever need. I promise you that. I can see why this is so divisive though. This is wonderful. It's just not. I can't say it's nothing like Harley's ever built before, because I don't have enough knowledge, and you know, I don't have the experience to oh, this is exactly like, you know, a Buell Lightning, or I don't know. I just don't know. It's great, but I can definitely see why people that are into Harley don't like this bike. But personally, I like this bike. Again, the seating, the triangle per se, is so fucking weird. The triangle's really weird. The seating is comfortable. It's not cruiser comfortable. You're leaning forward way more than you should be technically on a cruiser. It's just weird. Imagine if a sport bike had front controls. It's really weird. I like weird things though, so. It definitely needs a different seat though, because like acceleration, I am sliding bad, and I haven't fallen off the bike, but I just feel like there isn't enough seat behind me to grab me. This is not a bad bike. It needs some tweaking. It needs some stuff done to it for it to truly be a great bike, because it's just stuck in this middle ground where it wants to be, it feels like it wants to be a sport bike, but it just can't, because it's also trying to remain a cruiser. It's just in this middle ground, and again, personally, I like it. I like this, but you can't call it a cruiser, because it wants to be one. It wants to be a cruiser, but It also wants to be a sport bike. It's just trying to be a bunch of different things. And I really like this. So I'm not regretting any of this, but yeah, this is a little bit of an identity crisis bike, if you ask me. So
Alright, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get this list finally started. Now, one thing I want to make very clear about this list before we start, it is strictly my opinion. The only hierarchy on this list, the only reasoning on this list and why things are where they are is strictly just based on my personal opinions, how I feel about the bike, how I feel on the bike. So, you might not agree with the listing that's going to be taking place, but again, this is strictly just my opinion. So, starting at the bottom of the list. Now, just because it's at the bottom doesn't mean it's bad, but you have a lot of good bikes going on, so at the bottom of this list currently is the Kawasaki Z650 RS. I don't remember anything about riding that bike. It was a good bike. I remember, like, it was fun to ride, but I don't remember anything about the bike, so that's why it's at the very bottom of this list. Up next on the list is going to be a tie between the Vulcan S 650 and the Fat Bob. Now, you're probably like, how can you even tie those two bikes? Here's my thought process for it. The Vulcan S and the Fat Bob trade each other off in my vision, in my view. So, whereas the Fat Bob, beautiful bike, I love that bike. It's a very fun weekend bike to just take out and have fun. Whereas the Vulcan S is way less frill. It just feels like a more refined machine. It's just very well-mannered. It's wonderful, but they both trade each other off because the Fat Bob, I don't want to do anything to, just because of how much I like the way it looks, but then the Vulcan S, I don't care about the way it looks, but it rides really well. So they're in the same spot right now, and they trade each other off, in my opinion. If I had to pick one over the other, it would strictly depend on how much money I had at the time, because obviously the Fat Bob is way more expensive than the Vulcan S, so which one I would pick would pretty much depend on how much money I had, and that's going to be the theme with this list. But as it sits right now, I might come back and fix it, but the Vulcan S and the Fat Bob are tied in the same place. Up next is the KLR 650. At first, I didn't think I was going to like the KLR 650, but as I got to ride it, as I got more used to it, I learned to appreciate the weight to it, I learned to appreciate the feel to it. It just, not a bike I'd necessarily aspire to own. It's never a bike that's really been on my radar. I got to ride it, I did enjoy it, but I just don't care about it as much. Up next is going to be the Sportster S. It falls a little short of the top, even though I said in the beginning of this video that it's one of my dream bikes, because I got to ride it, and it's a very awkward bike. The seat's horrible on it. It's a very fun bike to ride, but I would have to do a lot to it to make it good at being a daily bike, because as it sits in its stock configuration, that thing would be very difficult to daily. It's beautiful. It is a beautiful bike, and I still love it. It's just trying to use it as a daily would be horrible. Third place on this list is going to be the Versus, I don't know which one it is. The Versus 650. I really appreciate how refined that motorcycle is. There's no frills to it. It's just very comfortable. It does its job very well. And part of being on a motorcycle is the thrill of it. And not that it isn't a thrilling machine, it just isn't crazy. It's just very comfortable. a lot of people will complain about how boring it is, but when I'm looking at a bike, especially right now, I like the practicality. I like being able to get on it and just go without having to worry about, you know, things. So the Versys 650, while it is a very boring bike by most standards, I really like that bike. And then a little bit of a news flash here. There is currently no first place. It is a tie for second place. It is going to be the Ninja 400 and the Pan America. Probably two polar opposite bikes, but again, going into my thought process with this. I really enjoyed the Ninja 400 way more than I thought I would. The only thing holding me back on that bike is its size physically. It's a very small bike, so storage on it would be kind of limited. I could get a tank bag, I could get little throw over universal saddlebags for it. My biggest concern is that bike getting stolen. I've personally seen a Kawasaki Ninja 650 get stolen out of a parking lot with my own eyes. So just where I am physically, sport bikes are a very hot item and they get scooped up like nothing. So that's the only thing keeping me back with the Ninja 400, is just I really do not want to get it stolen. And yes, I can get theft insurance, I can get all stuff, but I don't want my bike stolen. I want my bike to be my bike. And the Pan America, being the complete polar opposite, the only thing holding me back on the Pan America is the price tag. I believe that is currently the most expensive bike on this list, and I love that bike more than the Versys. It does everything the Versys does, but better. It's a really great bike, but god, that price tag. So that's why we're in a tie for second place right now with the Ninja 400 and the Pan America. One is really expensive, and the other one, I really don't want it to get stolen. So there isn't a first place yet, but as it sits right now, the Ninja 400 and the Pan America are my top bikes that I am currently aspiring to own in this list. So yep, there we go. There's the list. I appreciate you for watching today's video, and I actually thought of an outro this time, so it's a really good one too. So now my outro is going to be watch out for birds. So thank you for watching the video. I look forward to everything this series is going to bring to me, and watch out for birds. Yeah.